There we go.
Okay, so everybody's been to a restaurant before, and one thing that every restaurant waiter or waitress expects is that you tip at the end of your meal. But it's all to the customer's discretion, so you never know if they're gonna tip or not. For a waiter or waitress, $2.13 is minimum wage. So the restaurant can choose to pay you more than that if they. It's all dependent on what their position, how much they want to pay. Versus any other job, minimum wage is $7.25. So that's a big difference, and as the more hours you work, that adds up. So versus when you make $7.25 as minimum wage, you sort of know what you're gonna make at the end of your pay period, so you can plan on what you're gonna spend it on. You can make a budget rather than at a restaurant $2.13 versus and plus your tips. It varies because you never know how much you're gonna get at the end of your pay period. Usually, waiters or waitresses make more than the $7.25 minimum wage, but it could if the restaurant gets no customers and nobody's there to tip, you make less, or if customers just aren't tipping. First, when you work in the morning, less people tip because of they. I wouldn't even really know the statistic behind knowing why they don't tip in the morning, but at night people usually tip more. I would feel like because that's where people start drinking and they pay more just because they're not in the right state of mind. So because of them not knowing what they're gonna make at the end of their pay period, they don't know if they can afford an apartment, if they don't know if they'll be able to pay their expenses at the end of the pay period. So when you work towards getting more tips, but it's all to the customer's discretion on whether or not they're gonna pay you. So it could change your quality of life versus not knowing what you're gonna make versus knowing what you're gonna make. That's why tipping is usually 15% average. Here in Georgia where I live, it's 14% average, which really isn't that bad. I'm sure it's worse in other places. 20 plus for greater service. It's usually base. 10 is for if they really didn't do a good job. Any service at all I feel like requires some sort of tip, whether it's even lower than 10%. It all depends on the service. 15% is average, so that's what you should base pay if they did just their bare minimum, what they should do. And 20 plus for if they're a little friendlier than more people. So I'm proposing that there's a 10% mandatory tip for any service because some people don't tip, and that could make the balances weight on the other end because you can not know how much you make at the end of the day versus when you get 10% mandatory tip for service, you know that you'll make at least this much and you can budget to do whatever you need to do. Putting this in motion, making it a law, or all restaurants just requiring it will level set the playing field for waiters or waitresses, so they know that they'll make a certain amount of money, like I said, and they can plan a budget for certain things versus if you don't know how much you're gonna make at the end of the pay period, you have no idea if you'll be able to afford this one month and not the other. And though you overall, and all the customers will benefit as well because they'll get better service because they know that they'll never have to worry about somebody behind them not paying for their tip. So I would feel like I would get sort of an attitude if somebody didn't pay me the tip that I felt like I deserved. Even if I did great service, or even if I just did the bare minimum, it's expected that you pay for the service they provided to you. It will also make sure they have a livable wage, so they can't get not enough to support them or their family members. And customers who get served should pay for their service. So even if it was the worst service in the world, get some sort of tip to your tip should reflect the service that they gave you. They know what a normal tip is. So if you give them not enough, they might step up the service for the next person rather than not giving them anything at all. They just might think you're rude. That's it.